Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of SpawnCast. That is the Spawn Wave podcast for you guys. We're going to try to make this either weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how often we can get guests on here. But today, I am joined by my co-host, Evan,
hey,
also known as Kimmerix, and then I also have GameOverJesse, who's Jesse, right over there.
Yeah. What's up, everybody?
So I said your name here twice, GameOverJesse and Jesse, yes. But glad to have you here. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about you and how you got started on YouTube and everything?
Yeah, basically before I started uploading my own YouTube videos, which lately has just been Breath of the Wild and Nintendo Switch news, somewhat similar to what Spawn Wave does on his channel. And before I started getting into that, I was a writer for a few different websites like Zelda Dungeon, Zelda Informer, and other Nintendo-related websites. And it basically got to the point to where I, instead of using other websites as an outlet to get my opinion across, I wanted to get my own opinion across on something that I was in full control of, and that sort of developed into my YouTube channel to where I can just discuss whatever it is that I want to talk about without someone saying, hey, you can't talk about this, or no one's going to be interested in this.
That makes sense. Yeah, that way you don't have a boss, basically. So that you're just the boss then, right? That's the idea.
Right.
Yeah. Evan and I have tried many times to do like a website, like an IGN or something like that, but the amount of time and effort with that is tremendous. So it ends up, it becomes very difficult. I know, Evan, you also did a couple things with Ander, and that got really difficult as well.
Yeah, it always looks so much easier from far away.
Well, if you go into their offices, they have 30, 40, even 50 people there working all the time. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to get into. I think YouTube's a little easier just because, of course, you can record, you can talk, and then you can publish it. So I think, of course, that's easier for one, even two people to kind of do.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of work. So I won't say it's not work, but it's definitely easier than having to write 1,000 to 10,000 words a day. So the obvious thing going on right now is the Nintendo Switch, and I know Jesse, you do a lot of Zelda on your channel. It's a lot of I see you do a lot of like the Zelda theories and everything. So
yeah, used to it was Zelda theories, but as we're getting closer to the Breath of the Wild launch, more people are just interested in finding out as much as they can about the game, as opposed to theorizing about the lore of some game that came out 10 years ago. But they will return sometime.
See, that's the one game that I think would actually get Evan off the computer to play a console game is Zelda. Because I know, Evan, you played Skyward Sword, right?
For the most part. Eventually it got to the point where the puzzles did start feeling a little repetitive, and I haven't gone past that point.
Did you play Twilight Princess also? I can't remember.
Yeah, GameCube version specifically.
Oh, nice. Okay, you like that one more than Skyward Sword though.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's the consensus. Most people say Skyward Sword is the worst Zelda game out of most. I shouldn't say all of them, because there's, of course, the ones on the CDI, but it's considered one of the worst mainstream Zeldas by a lot of people, I think.
Which kind of sucked, because the whole opening to it built this world that could have been amazing, but I guess the game design itself kind of crumbled the further in you get.
I think a lot of the motion controls probably hurt people too. What were you saying, Jesse? I'm sorry.
I was going to say with Skyward Sword, the main reason a lot of people didn't like it, of course, is obviously the motion control, which some people just don't like it. They prefer playing with a regular controller. But for those that were able to get past the motion controls and actually enjoyed it, what a lot of those people didn't like about it is when you think of Zelda, you usually think about this huge open world with all of these dungeons and towns connecting, like a traditional open world type of game. But in Skyward Sword, there was no connection between all of the main territories. It was just segmented off places. There was the forest overworld, the water overworld, and then the fire overworld. And instead of having a huge field or world connecting them, they were just kind of branched off on their own. So it kind of took away what a lot of people actually liked about the Zelda series. So that's why
it seems like they go from that to Breath of the Wild, and it's just a complete 180 with that.
Yeah. And a big reason that Skyward Sword was made like that was because it was trying to compete with games at the time on the 360, PS3, and PC, which were able to have these massive games like Skyrim, but obviously the Wii was very limited in what it was able to do. So to work around that, they created the painting artwork style, because instead of where it had a poor draw distance, instead of having things just completely disappear as you got further away from it, as most games do, they made it to where it kind of blended in with the background to make this painting type art style. And another big thing about it was having a huge open world connecting everything. The Wii wouldn't have technically been able to do that. So that's why you had these segmented off places. Yeah,
Nintendo does a lot of some good things, I guess, to make weaker hardware be stronger. Like, I mean, I still can't believe that Mario Galaxy 2 was on that system. It's just a great looking game.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, but that's kind of sad for the whole segmenting thing, because if you think to the past with other games, the similar ones that use that painting method to kind of beat the draw distance, we got Shadow of the Colossus on that list, and it was all one giant, massive, seamless world. Yeah, so it's kind of weird that they didn't figure something else out.
Yeah. Well, with Shadow of the Colossus, like, you didn't need any of the CPU power to go towards AI or anything, because there was just the overworld bosses that you had to fight in the places that they were located in. So there wasn't like tons of enemies running around or NPCs and stuff like that. It was just basically you in the open field.
So let me ask you, Jesse, other than Zelda, what's the next Zelda or next Switch game, I should say, that you're looking forward to? That's, I don't want to say too far out, but within the next 3 months.
I think the next big one everybody's looking forward to is the Super Mario Odyssey, but getting nearer to the launch window, I'm really looking forward to Yooka-Laylee.
Well, yeah, that's going to be good. That might actually be a game that I end up buying twice, more than likely. One on my Switch and probably one on my PS4, my computer. Actually, maybe my PC, actually, yeah. But that game looks awesome just because I'm a big Banjo-Kazooie fan.
Yeah, it's that's the same debate that I'm having. Should I get it for PS4 or should I get it for the Switch? Obviously, the PS4, you're going to have the trophies and everything. It's going to look somewhat better. But with the Switch, you're going to be able to take it on the go, so it's kind of the pros and cons, which is better for you.
Yep, exactly. Evan, have you seen anything about Yooka-Laylee?
Yeah, I keep up to date with it occasionally. I love all the nostalgia games coming back as like something different.
Yeah, did you see they did like Ty the Tasmanian Tiger or whatever on Steam? Did you see that?
Yeah.
That was awesome. Like, I bought that because it looked so cool. It was like $10 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty cheap, but I always love it when companies do that, or when people from companies do that. Like, I loved following the guys from Blizzard North up through Torchlight, Titan Quest, currently Grim Dawn, stuff like that. I always love it when the games like that continue in life through those creators in some way, shape, or form. So Yooka-Laylee seems like a pretty amazing thing coming out.
That's actually, I remember Titan Quest, I actually had to update my video card from a FX 5200 to a 6800 GT back then. Anyway, yes, that's I'm currently in the Fast RMX camp right now. That's the game I actually really want to play. I didn't get a chance to play it when I actually went to the event to play the Switch, because I actually ended up filming most of the time in the beginning, and then it was kind of like a race against the clock to play everything. But it's a cool looking game. I do like that it's 1080p, 60 frames, even with 4 people on the same screen. And it looks like a callback to F-Zero, so I'll probably be playing that too. And we found out today that it's coming out at launch.
Awesome.
Yep, so it will be a launch title, along with Shovel Knight, actually. So Shovel Knight will be on there. And that's another game that will do very well if you haven't already played Shovel Knight like 8 times already like I have. So
yeah, that was a game that I really liked on the Vita. So having it on a bigger screen with a higher resolution, but still being able to play on the go will be great for me.
Yeah, that's that game though gets that when you start getting further into it, gets to the point where you're kind of clenching your palms most of the time. So I feel like I'm gonna end up crushing a Joy-Con in that game. There's another game that got announced, Celeste. It's like an indie game. Have you seen that?
I haven't heard of it yet.
It's kind of like Super Meat Boy. So that's another game where you might crush a Joy-Con just playing it. So it's there's like spikes everywhere, and you have to do a bunch of air dashing and everything. So it looks like it'll be cool. I'm looking forward to it. Of course, it's going to be very hard to get a Switch after launch. Now, I did hear though that GameStop is getting their initial launch, and then after that they're getting a separate amount that's allocated to them for walk-ins on the day it comes out. So
yeah, I feel bad for all of the people that are having to go through scalpers. Last night I was just looking on Amazon and some other sites where people were reselling Switches, and all of the questions and answers that you could see in the reviews and stuff was just everybody complaining about people charging like $600 for a Switch, and then you still get it like 2 or 3 days late.
Yeah, because you have to ship it to you.
Right, you have to wait for them to get the original shipment, and then they ship it to you, and you're basically paying twice as much to get it after everybody else does. So man, it really sucks for those people.
That is rough. That is not something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, but you and I both have seen that so much with so many different things over the years, John. Just
if you
been part of.
Yeah, Jesse, if you didn't know, actually a lot of people don't know because I don't really talk about personal life on YouTube at all, but this is a good chance for people who listen to this podcast to get the little bits of exclusives here into our life. Evan and I used to work for, 6 or 7 years, Evan?
7, I think.
7 years. We actually worked together at a video game store. And we were the people behind the counter who would either fix game consoles. I have talked about that on my videos, that I did spend a good chunk of my life repairing game consoles, or we would be ringing people up. So we'd always get the games, ahead of street date. They would show up at the store, and so for a while there, we would see scalpers try to come in and buy 5 systems at a time. Specifically, I think which system? I want to say it was the Xbox One, but it might have been the DSi or the 3DS where people were trying to buy them up like crazy.
I know it was the Xbox One. I know we had the people that one guy come in that one day for the Pokemon Go Plus device.
Yes.
He bought out everything in the local Walmart and the GameStops and all of it, and he was making sure we didn't have any.
That's right, I remember that. But you just got yours the other day, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you're fortunate on that. Those are very hard to get, Jesse. I don't know if you've gone around looking for those, the Pokemon Go Plus bands.
No, I haven't.
They've recently become easier to get, but at one point they were retailing for about 30 or 35, I think, and then they ended up selling online for about $100. So
yeah. See, I actually have a similar experience to where I can relate to what you guys were just talking about, because around the PS4 and Xbox One launch, I was actually working at GameStop during the midnight release for the Xbox One, so I had to come in like 2 or 3 days before the launch day, where we had all of the boxes. There was 2 Xbox Ones for each shipping box that they were in, and I had to take out like maybe 30 different Xbox Ones and just stack them on top of each other against the wall, and then organize like all of the different games and everything. And it was almost half a week before anyone else would be able to get their hands on it, and I'm just looking at this huge wall of Xbox One and Xbox One games.
See, I actually worked at GameStop back when the PS2 was actually still around, and that was but when God of War 2 I think came out, because I remember when I went for my interview they gave me a demo disc for God of War 2, but when the 360s came out, yes, it was pretty crazy, just like that, where you're stacking them like to the ceiling. And then I remember the Halo 3 came out, and they had the Master Chief collection, well, not the collection, but the one that had the helmet and everything with it.
Yeah.
And we had so many of those, but we actually had them a week before it came out, surprisingly, and we actually had to put like a black tarp over it in the back because people couldn't see it. But of course, I don't care now because I don't work there anymore. We actually ended up opening one up and playing with it and everything, which we probably weren't supposed to do. So
yeah, I have a friend that works at Target as a manager, and she was sending pictures of like all of the Nintendo Switch promotional stuff as they would come in. Like they had a huge display, but they weren't allowed to open it or move it around. They had to wait for a Nintendo rep to come there before they could set it up. So it's been interesting seeing how Nintendo's been dealing with their release of the Switch.
So let me jump to something with that real quick. Nintendo's marketing for the Switch has actually really caught me off guard recently. I think just leading up to the event, they have not been acting like how Nintendo usually does with their marketing. Going as far as to hire John Cena to help promote the Switch. I don't know if you saw that at all, but
yes, I seen a fun little joke on Twitter. Obviously, John Cena's in WWE. His thing is "You Can't See Me," and I seen someone had posted a picture of him playing a Nintendo Switch, and it said, "Nintendo didn't tell us that the Switch could float."
Yeah, because he's holding it. Yeah,
right.
But it's interesting that they do stuff. They're doing stuff like that right now, pulling in people that would appeal to like an American audience, as opposed to just being strictly like they would do stuff that would really just benefit the Japanese crowd. And now they're doing a lot of stuff to try to sell to the American crowd or even outside of Japan. So their marketing's become interesting now.
I believe John Cena, it's really good, smart for Nintendo, not necessarily just for the WWE fans, but I think he's hosting like the Kids' Choice Awards for Nickelodeon or something.
That makes sense.
So like if they have something tied in with that, which I guess most kids would be watching, so if they have some kind of marketing or commercials popping on and then John Cena's in the commercials while it's being played on the actual Choice Awards, then that may be a way to get all of the kids that just know their 3DS as the handheld unit and don't necessarily know about the Switch yet. Maybe it'll get them to where they see it and then they start begging their parents to go out and buy it for them.
That actually makes a lot of sense, yeah. So I'm pleasantly surprised by their marketing. I think they're setting themselves up well, and I think the sales are obviously showing that since everyone's sold out of it. So but let me jump from there over to the other side here and talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. So I don't know if you've seen anything about this game at all, Jesse, or even Evan.
Yeah, it's basically a more mature Breath of the Wild with a bit more of an RPG element than Breath of the Wild has. So
I have not played the game at all. I remember I sent away to get an early copy, but I never heard back. So that probably means they didn't care. But I probably shouldn't admit that on the podcast. But yes, I've been watching a lot of video for it. Now I'm going to get it when it comes out and probably just stream it. But it looks really cool. I just like the open concept and the idea of robot dinosaurs. But I was hoping it would also make its way to like the PC, but I think that's going to stick with the PS4, maybe even for its lifetime. Evan, did you watch any of the gameplay or anything for it?
I did, and I kind of liked where they were going with not just the open world. I mean, at this point in time, we're almost expecting open worlds for games like this, and like larger creatures is starting to become the thing. Like, how big of a creature can we put in your game? But in this one, it's more the point of impact damage that I like. The whole like. The individual creatures have, like, if you shoot it in the knee, it's going to act differently. And it's that kind of procedural response to things that I'm really looking forward to in the game. Sadly, I'm probably never going to play it if it doesn't come to PC. But
well, I don't know, Evan, if you're on this channel, you might need a PS4. Maybe we got to get you one.
Are we going to get one for the office?
Yeah, we're going to get one for my basement is sure the office. That's what you want to call
it. One thing that I think is really unique about that game is how you can sort of for those that don't know about the game, a big part of it is that it's basically like a futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of thing to where all of the wildlife is like half biomechanical. So they're basically living robots. And they kind of act as the enemies, but you can also hack into them to kind of make them companions or use them to ride around and attack other enemies. So it's really cool how the AI and the enemies can kind of work with you instead of only against you.
That looks good. I mean, like I said, the AI in that game looks great. The AI in Breath of the Wild looks great, even though they're basically very similar games. I think they'll both be pretty good on their respective consoles at this point. Both releasing in the same week too, which is interesting.
The similarities are really crazy. Like whenever Skyward Sword released, a lot of people compared it to Skyrim because they kind of launched around the same time. Because traditionally Zelda, usually an open world game, and then Skyrim at the time was the game that was taking open world to the next level. So there was a lot of comparisons there that I don't really think were fair. But with Breath of the Wild, it's being compared with Horizon Zero Dawn, and I think those comparisons are fair because at the end of one of my videos, I read a bunch of the developer and publisher descriptions on what they had to say about the game and how they described the world, the story, and everything. And if you just read it without context, it sounds exactly like Breath of the Wild, to where you set out on your adventure not knowing what's happened to the world. You just know that enemies and weird mechanical things have kind of taken over, and as you play through it, it's your job to kind of figure out what happens. And then it says there's like the RPG elements and stuff like that as you level up different weapons and use different items to craft and make stuff.
Sure.
And it sounds exactly like Breath of the Wild, but it's not. So it's really interesting to see how these compare with each other. And I just hope whenever it comes to the actual reviews from IGN, GameSpot, and all of the other websites, I hope they don't directly compare the two, because they might give Horizon Zero Dawn an unfair score because it doesn't live up to what Breath of the Wild is, and vice versa. They may give Breath of the Wild a lower score because it's not doing exactly what Horizon Zero Dawn does.
Sure. So, yeah, I think at this point Horizon Zero Dawn has its reviews, and it did pretty well. A lot of places, I think IGN gave it like a 9.3, and most of the other places gave it hundreds, so it did well. But I do think Breath of the Wild will get a similar review score just because it looks good. Now, let me ask you one other thing about Breath of the Wild, Jesse. Do you know how many temples and everything are supposed to be in it?
The shrines, which are kind of the mini dungeons.
I haven't looked at any spoilers, but I'm just curious at this point how many of the mini dungeons are supposedly supposed to be in there.
Yeah, so there are 120 mini dungeons, or what they're calling shrines, which, if you're listening to this and you're familiar with past Zelda games, the shrines are more akin to kind of what the Ice Cavern was or the Bottom of the Well for Ocarina of Time, to where it wasn't a fully fledged out dungeon, it was more of a mini dungeon. And the mini dungeons in this, they can be 1 or 2 room puzzles, and then it takes you 5 minutes and you're out. Or they could be these massive underground shrines to where it takes up to 30 to 40 minutes to complete. So it really varies on length from shrine to shrine. But there are also full dungeons in this game. The original rumor was there was going to be 4 main dungeons and over 100 mini dungeons. We got the confirmation on the mini dungeons and the exact number, but we don't know if there's going to be 4 main dungeons. So that's still up for debate.
It just sounds like there's just gonna be a lot of stuff to do. So I'm really excited to get this game next Thursday night. Are you doing a midnight release, Jesse? You're gonna attend one of those? Or you just go the next day?
I was hoping I would have been able to get a copy from like GameStop, Walmart, or wherever, to where I could go at midnight and get it. But I was only able to order it through Amazon. So that hopefully, I've heard some people like ordering Xbox Ones and the PS4 during launch day. Sometimes they were lucky and they actually got it the day before.
Ooh, nice.
So I'm hopefully, with huge luck, I might get it the day before. That way I could still play it around the same time everybody else does. Otherwise, I'll probably get it late in the evening the next day, where everybody else has already had their live streams and information up.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll be behind, so...
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting day next Friday when everyone's just live streaming that game.
Yeah, and what I really, really hate is where Nintendo isn't that experienced with their online kind of stuff. So I hope there isn't server issues when people do get the Switch, because everyone's going to immediately be downloading Breath of the Wild and maybe some of the other games. So I hope it doesn't get to the point to where if you don't have the physical copy, it's going to take you 6 or 7 hours just to download Breath of the Wild, because all of the millions of people are accessing it at the exact same time.
So it tells me to buy physical. So but not just for the collector's value, of course, but just to have it day one and not have to download it. Now, speaking of downloading, they're supposed to have a day one patch, and hopefully that addresses one of the biggest concerns right now, which, I don't know if you were paying attention to this at all, Jesse, but there was an issue with the Joy-Cons connecting to the system.
I haven't seen that. Is that something new? Yeah,
this came out today, and what happened was, of course, the embargo lifted today, the 23rd, and everybody, of course, is showing off their Switch. And what happened was GameExplain figured out that if you have actually they showed it was either one, but the left one seems to be getting most of the flack. If you have a barrier in front of it, specifically your body or your hands, it will actually lose connection and start dropping out signal. To the point where it's unplayable. Like, you'll see the joysticks like freezing, basically. So Link will just stop running, and then he'll just start running in a completely different direction, and you can't stop him. So
that does suck.
It seems to be a problem, and they demonstrated it. It's on GameExplain's YouTube channel. They demonstrated them covering it with their hands. It would happen. They would put it behind them. It would start happening. So it seems to be an issue with, strangely, not line of sight, but just interference with having something around the Joy-Con. Now,
Right.
I do think it's something that could be fixed with a firmware update, because it's probably something to do with the Bluetooth 3, either the amplifier, the gain going to it. More than likely, it's something that should be fixed. But I'm hoping that's not something that's left out in that day one patch, because people will point that out like crazy. Now, they didn't do anything with the Pro Controller. I really would have liked them to take a Pro Controller and try covering that up to see if it has the same issue, because I'm getting a Pro Controller as well, and I really won't use the Joy-Cons much once I turn that Pro Controller on. But
Yeah, everybody's talking about the little baby buttons on the Switch Joy-Cons.
yeah, the Pro Controller is a good controller. I used it. The only issue I think a lot of people seem to have are there's no analog triggers. Basically, when you hit the triggers, they just kind of click and that's it. But overall, it's a good controller. It gets 40 hours of battery life,
That's insane.
which is obscene considering my PS4 controller gets like 6 hours of battery life. I was playing The Division today, and I didn't get very far without it dying, so I forgot to charge it last night, so that's why. But I'm looking forward to the Pro Controller, but I'm a little concerned about the Joy-Cons not having good connectivity, just obviously because there will be certain games you'll want to play with it. Now, when I played ARMS, I had no problem, so I'm not really sure why that was the case.
This actually seems like the biggest problem would come from people playing 1-2 Switch, as that's the game where you're actively moving around, and it's not just you, it's another person playing with you, so I wonder what kind of problems that game will have with desyncing and everything.
Well, I played 1-2 Switch for a total of like 3 minutes, because they had me do the cowboy game where you shoot the other person. That took a total of 20 seconds, not even. And then they had me do the marble game where you put it on your palm and you roll it around to feel how many marbles are inside of it. And that did really well too, but again, I didn't do anything with actual like motion or using it for anything with 1-2 Switch other than those two things. And the milking game was not there when I went up. They just changed it back and forth. But when I did play like Mario Kart, it played fine, but of course the Joy-Cons were like attached to it. So it's going to be something that I'm sure will be talked about heavily when the Switch actually gets into the wild for the public to use. So let's jump over. Evan, you've been doing a lot of Pokemon Go, right?
Solid week basically of playing.
Okay, cool. Because I was going to ask you about this new update that came out, because I picked it up again today after you told me all about it yesterday, and it seems pretty cool. I like that it's a little harder to evolve your Pokemon, but did you want to give us an idea of what exactly has changed so far? I know you're working on a video, but if you want
I got the video coming up, but it's a couple changes that are like more quality of life that you and I have both wanted in the game for the longest time. In particular, I guess prior to this patch, they added in the multi-selecting for transferring to get candies, which if you remember way back, it was always just click Pokemon transfer, and it was endless droves. Yeah. So they finally fixed that, which you'd think they would have fixed it a lot sooner, but I mean, it's fine. But on top of that, they added the rare items, which I did some math today, and it's kind of annoying. In the past week, I think I've hit 250 Pokestops, and I've yet to see an evolution item.
Those are the stones you were talking about, or item that would help the Pokemon evolve, minus just having the amount of candy, right?
Yeah, you need the candy and the item, so it's like the steel coat and all that. So it's cool that it's in-game, but all I see whenever I go on any forums or Reddit or anything is everyone that lives kind of in the middle of nowhere just hating this game because they have to drive like 30 minutes to get to like the one Pokestop that's in their town.
that just tells me that the people in New York or like San Francisco or Chicago, they just have the advantage then, right?
Yeah, they just don't care. Like, I have to drive 2 minutes down the road to Main Street, and that's where all the Pokestops are for me. I was testing it today since you talked me into getting the Pokemon Go Plus thing. I wanted to see how effective it was. And it's pretty interesting because they did add that 25 mile an hour, I think it was, limit to the game, where if you go above it, all the Pokemon vanish, your radar stops working.
Really?
And you can't spin Pokestops. And
what? Wow.
I wanted to test it out. I wanted to have the phone just kind of down and away from me and the Pokemon Go Plus thing in my hand while I just like did a really slow lap around Main Street. It's approximately 25 Pokestops in that run. And it was weird. It only picked up about 6. So I think the responsiveness is still not good because this thing's been out for a while. The the Plus device.
Right.
And I don't know, it just doesn't feel responsive for Pokestops, at least. But on an interesting note, if you're going past that point, it does pick up Pokemon like quickly. And even if you don't see them in game, it recognizes them. You just hit the button and you just keep going. It'll try to catch them.
Now you're talking about on the Pokemon the Go Plus bracelet you got, right?
Yeah, well, I use it as a clip because the bracelet they send you is for baby arms, and I don't have those.
Yeah, they give you like a really tiny bracelet. So you didn't even open it up to see what it's like, but you just use a clip, like you just clip it to like your pocket.
Yeah, or my sleeve.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then you just hit the button, and it'll catch the Pokemon for you, basically, right? It'll
either attempt to catch a Pokemon if that's what it found, or it'll attempt to use a Pokestop, which is weird. It's kind of odd the way this works, because I tried it once where I drove past a Pokestop and then it picked the Pokestop up, and then I hit it and it took like 10 seconds. Like the Pokestop was good 6 blocks away from me at that point, and it still got it for some reason.
Wow, jeez.
So like I don't know what the connectivity issue is that makes it have that much lag, but then in the same instance, I was sitting at an intersection with 3 Pokestops around me, and it took it like 4 minutes before it noticed them.
Well, to be fair with that game, it always seems to have like some kind of bug or issues with it, no matter what. I don't know if it's because it tries to interact with like real world landmarks, but it's always had that weird, I don't know, jankiness to it for me.
Yeah, but I mean, they're moving in a good direction, and I like that. I just think it's too slow still, because they have heavily adjusted combat. If you remember when we were heavily playing, combat in gyms was basically just tank the damage, spam click as fast as you can, don't even button. Worry about your charge. Yeah, and you were just attacking like 5-6 times because you would attack before your animation was done. They seem to have smoothed that out. The animations have to end. There's like a queuing system that they applied to the game somehow, where you'll attack, and if you click again, it won't attack until afterwards. But there's downsides to that, because if you queue something up that you don't want to do, then you're screwed. You're stuck in it. It even holds whatever you queued for the next thing after you defeat a Pokemon. So if you double-click by accident, and then the first click kills it, the second Pokemon that pops up after it in a gym, you'll attack it immediately and be stuck in that animation to get hit twice by that Pokemon, because that's usually what happens when it comes up in the gym.
Okay.
So like it's starting to feel like they're smoothing combat out and making it so that like the agile Pokemon feel that way again, and that the big heavy hitters feel that way. But it's still so far away from what it needs to be.
I wonder if we'll ever get Pokemon through NFC. Like where you just touch the phones together, like you trade, but only through NFC. Wonder if we'll ever get that.
I just want trading and dueling in general, and I know they said something about dueling early this year, and they just hinted that. Like they hinted at it last year too, so no one's really too sure what they're gonna do or like how it's gonna pan out for them. But at the end of the day, like dueling, great, trading, great. That'll get it at least to the minimal level of me actually thinking of it as a Pokemon game.
Right.
But they need to access more about the mobile market and realize that there are people who are kind of stuck and can't just do what I can and drive 3 minutes down the road and have access to like 6 gyms and just so many Pokestops. It's maddening. For those people, they need a functional way to play the game outside of that.
Outside of just paying real money, you mean?
Yeah, and I think, like, why not just add an event that you don't have to drive to, like a weekly dungeon or something that you can take some Pokemon into and see how it pans out. And it could even add to the microtransactions of being able to increase the amount of times you can do it by paying X amount of gold coins or whatever.
So, that's Pokemon Go. I guess I assume you're going to keep playing it for the most part, right? I'm
gonna keep playing it, and I'm gonna keep my ear to the ground for anything coming up, because you don't hit this big to try to pull everyone back in that's kind of stopped playing it,
right? Only
to then like let the ball drop again and be like, well, see you in another year. So I'm hoping it doesn't go that route.
So we have that. I don't know if you've got... I talked to you a little bit about this, Evan. I don't know if you keep up with a lot of the retro news, Jesse, at all?
Yeah, some of it.
Okay. There was... this is something I was ongoing for a while. I kind of talked about this on Twitter some. So there was a there's a person out there who is trying to catalog all of the Super Nintendo games in their like raw file format that they want to call them as clean ROMs or clean files, because right now if you go online and you download a ROM, it could be the header could be changed, there could be coding that's different because people like to put their signature on it. And what they're trying to do is catalog this stuff just to have like a library for the future, because eventually all these games will go away. It just will eventually happen because they're all physical. No matter how much you want to take care of, say, EVO or Evo, for example, that game is almost $300 now because it is slowly becoming harder and harder to find.
Yeah, there are tons of great 8 and 16-bit games that were never brought to newer hardware.
Sure.
And they were just kind of abandoned on the console, either because the publisher or the developer of the games kind of went away or went out of business or broke up, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So the games were never really brought to the newer consoles, and like I said, they're just stranded to where they're basically impossible to find anywhere unless you have a ROM. So
here's the plan. The plan was for this person's name is Bew, BYUU. The plan here was to start asking for any of the rarer games to be sent to them so that they could dump the ROM with what I believe is what they were saying was a custom-made ROM dumper, so that you wouldn't be able to send that to anybody because they wouldn't know how to use it. The idea was to have games sent to them, and then they would go ahead, dump them, send the games back. The games, of course, would be very valuable because they're hard to find, so a very nice person, I believe, over in Germany had a bunch of PAL games that they were going to send to Bew. So they send the first 100. They have no problem getting there. They get back. They send another 100 games, and the United States Postal Service manages to lose it in the mail. And this package was actually worth about $10,000 of 100 PAL Super Nintendo games. So
that is insane.
So the problem here, obviously, is this package is not showing up. So the tracking shows that it was no problem going through DHL, getting out of Germany, getting out of Europe, going all the way across the ocean, and then landing in Jersey City, and then it never leaves Jersey City. It just stays there. So about a week or so goes by. BU just believes that this package is lost, starts considering putting a claim in for it, and at their door, a ripped-off part of the box with the label shows up, and USPS has a letter that says, "We're sorry, your package was damaged by machines and they're lost for good."
Wow.
So BU at that point believes that somebody at the United States Postal Service has now stolen this package, because it's not common for machines to rip the side of this thing off and then mail it to you, because obviously the box would still be near the label. So at this point, BU is, obviously freaking out, having an issue, starts tweeting to USPS on Twitter, and eventually Kotaku, Polygon, Machinima, all these places pick it up. We were all tweeting about it on Twitter and everything, and then the United States Postal Service must have taken notice, because they messaged BU and say that the only reason they're actually contacting BU is because so many places online picked it up. So yes, the online video game media industry, YouTubers, Twitter, apparently they all have an influence still on these big companies, because about 2 days later, all of the games magically appear and show up at BU's house.
Wow.
Yes, that's an interesting story to keep in mind. So now BU and this other person will not be using, I guess, the United States Postal Service anymore. But yeah, isn't that crazy? So that's something to think about the next time you want to send very expensive things in the mail. Maybe break them up from, instead of 100 things, maybe break them up into packages of 10.
Yeah, that I really couldn't imagine that. Like, I get nervous enough whenever I order a new GPU or something through the mail for my computer.
Sure.
So, something that's more expensive than a few $100s.
Yep. Because they're usually not very kind to the packages. I don't want to say everybody, because I'm sure there's good post office workers out there that actually, treat their job correctly and do everything. But of course, you always get, obviously, bad eggs in every batch. And in this case, it just takes one person to chuck it onto a porch and do damage to it, or just not even deliver it. So it's a little worrying that this took so long to get taken care of, considering it had no problem going all the way across, obviously, most of Europe, the ocean, and then landing in the United States, and then it gets lost there. So it's a little worrying about USPS kind of gaffing up that whole situation. So, what do you think, Evan? I know you've had your issues with the mail too.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's even more like, I know we're talking about it like, oh, it was this much money, but it's also the historic value, the fact that there's probably so few of them left. So there's so much more behind it than just...
These are PAL games. They're like Vampire's Kiss, which is very difficult to find. I actually searched some of the games on eBay, and some of them just don't even exist on eBay. The few that I found were like $500. Mega Man X3 was one of them.
Yeah, so I kind of want to follow it up further than just like, oh, we found them, here you go. I want to know if there's like a faction in USPS in Jersey City that like they kicked in their door and recovered all the games or something.
Probably, honestly, what I think happened is if a machine did damage it, the games would have still been like, they would have been thrown along the floor. But what they said was it was just separated from the box. The box was still there, and they managed to find them because in the picture that was posted, they show up still in their plastic and everything, and they didn't look damaged at all. So the box, I guess, was just sitting in a corner somewhere. And finally, they decided to go look for it.
Yeah, that's the hope, I guess.
Yeah, that's what you'd hope, right? So let me jump from there, and we will talk about Microsoft because I want to try to talk about every company I can, obviously on this podcast. Unfortunately, Microsoft really doesn't have much to talk about. I don't know if Evan, you even pay attention to anything Microsoft's doing right now, because it's confused me completely with their whole marketing, their whole strategy in general to give people on PC the same games that you can get on the Xbox, because then there's not much of a point to buy an Xbox, at least that I can tell.
What little I tend to browse for news, like I don't see any Microsoft news.
You don't. I have to imagine. I have to imagine you see a lot of Nintendo news right now, and then you see some Sony. Yeah. You see some Sony news. I assume that's all what you see mostly. Occasionally, an indie developer or an event like the Super Nintendo being lost. Microsoft has not had much of any press recently, except for two things. One, they're talking about their new Scorpio system that is supposedly going to be a 6 teraflop beast of a system that will, I guess, bring, again, multi-platforms, because Microsoft has done nothing but cancel games like Scalebound, for example. And I assume they are trying to bring what will eventually be a very affordable unit that is going to be very powerful into people's homes, but it sounds more and more like they're trying to build a Steam machine rather than an exclusive console.
Well, I don't know if it would be a Steam machine specifically, because they still use their crappy little Microsoft. What is it now? It's the Microsoft store?
No. Well, I mean, it's running Windows 10, so yeah, it's the Windows Store. Pretty much.
Yeah, but I mean, game-wise, like I picked up Gigantic recently because that was a huge, interesting game for me, and I was glad that it finally came into beta. But from what I remembered, it was supposed to be Xbox One and PC only, which it currently is. But it was going to stay that way because it was going to be an exclusive for the whole cross-platform thing. It was going to be like the spearhead of cross-platform. Okay. But Microsoft, like, I guess, stopped caring about it, and they let it go to some other company. So even though it's only out on PC, Xbox One right now, there's plans for pretty much every other system for it to be cross-platform too, because Microsoft let that exclusivity go because they just didn't care.
Yeah, they're doing some odd choices. Seems like they really want this hardware to get out there, this 6 teraflop Scorpio Xbox system. Badly want it to get out there, and I don't really know why, because they have done nothing but promise that the system will work just the same with the original Xbox One all the way up to the Scorpio, so you'll be able to play the same games. From what I could tell, the frame rates will be better, the resolutions will be better, and that's about it. They won't allow developers, from what they're saying now, maybe they change in the future, to make exclusive games for the Scorpio. I don't think they want to essentially screw over the original consumers who have then gotten the Xbox to this point where they can make the Scorpio. And I understand that, but at the same time, they're going to badly, obviously, hamper the Scorpio's ability to play games that you can do with a 6 teraflop system, obviously, compared to what I think the Xbox One is 1.3 teraflops, which is was that 4.5 times the difference?
Yeah, but it's going to be weird, I guess, even though games are going to be coming out on it, what are you going to be missing from that game? Like, are they going to disable functions of the game on the standard Xbox One compared to the Scorpio? Are you not going to be able to stream it from the standard Xbox One and only stream it from the Scorpio? Kind of stuff.
Here's the amazing thing. fans of Xbox, so they call them, everybody seems to have a nickname for all the different companies. Fans of the Xbox, I think, are called Xbots. What are Sony fans? Are they like ponies? And then what are Nintendo? Jesse, do you know what the Nintendo fans are like called?
I have no idea.
I feel like it's like,
I don't think I've ever heard like a specific word.
Yeah, I think it's Nintendrones, I think is what they call it. Oh yeah. Anyway, the whole fanboy thing is dumb in the first place. But anyway, Xbox fans that I see talking about this system seem to have an interesting pipe dream where it's going to have a Ryzen CPU and it's going to have a Vega GPU for $400. And I can tell you now that is not the case. If they have both of those things in there, this system will be like $600 or $700 minimum. Now, let's not get into the fact that Ryzen was just brought to market yesterday. Like it was pre-ordered yesterday, and it's now becoming available on March 3rd. Somehow they think the Scorpio, which is coming out holiday season, is going to use a CPU that's not even announced yet, because it wouldn't use the Ryzen 7. It would use like a Ryzen 3. There's no way I think it's going to be using that. I think it'll be using the older CPU, possibly the same one from the Xbox One, and then probably a newer GPU, possibly still like a Polaris GPU though. So I don't really know what they seem to want 4K for $400, but they don't want to upscale. If it comes out at $400, I think the Scorpio will have to upscale, and that defeats the whole point of waiting a year to bring the system out when they could have just released it alongside with the PlayStation 4 Pro. Because now the Pro, of course, has that head start for a year. I mean, that's what the 360 gained on the PS3 that really helped the 360 last for as long as it did against the PS3, which eventually the PS3, of course, passed it right at the end of its lifespan. But I just think it's an odd time for Microsoft. There's a lot of hype around Nintendo right now. There's a lot of hype still around Sony just because of some of the games they've been announcing with Crash Bandicoot, which, by the way, looks really cool. And Horizon Zero Dawn, and here's Zelda, here's Mario Kart, here's Fire Emblem, here's Shin Megami, and Microsoft is doing things like canceling Scalebound and then telling us that Phantom Dust is coming out, okay, and it's 480p. So why is there a big flagship game like Phantom Dust coming out that's 480p when they're trying to push 4K visuals?
Yeah, that is a bit odd. Comparing the PS4 Pro and the Scorpio, I know there's a lot of people saying this, and I sort of have the same opinion that the PS4 Pro was more of a half step.
Yep.
And then the Scorpio is more of the next console. So I don't... Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it may have the same type of CPU that the Xbox One did. I don't see that happening. I know there was... Who was it? I forgot what YouTube channel it was, but they always make the comparison videos with graphics and stuff. And they were talking about how the Xbox One version of Hitman was held back and the frames were dropping because of the CPU in it, because the Xbox One S, or whatever the newer model of it,
Yep.
I believe they have one of them has more powerful GPU.
Well, the PS4 and the Xbox One, they're an interesting couple of systems, because the Xbox One technically has the stronger CPU because they have the exact same CPU pretty much, but the Xbox One, this is back when they first came out, had a slightly higher clocked CPU, but the PS4 had a much better GPU and it had GDDR5 RAM, whereas the Xbox One used DDR3, very similar, well, faster, I shouldn't say similar, faster than what's in, like, for example, a laptop. You get DDR3 and put it in there because I think it was rated at, 2400 megahertz, but the PS4 was using GDDR5, which is vastly superior for graphical stuff than DDR3 that the Xbox One was using. So here's the PS4 with much better visuals. They've realized that they just really need to upgrade the GPU side to get it to 4K because they're going to upscale as well. So they upgrade it from, I think it was 1.84 teraflops up to 4.2 teraflops. And now we have a system that can upscale to 4K or do native 4K with indie games, or less intensive games, I should say. And the Xbox now, I'm not sure if they need a vastly superior CPU. I don't think they have to go to Ryzen to get to 4K, and I do think the CPU is where they would cut costs as opposed to the GPU. But I still cannot see that system being any less than $500. I think it's a $500 system out the gate.
Yeah, that makes sense. If the PS4 Pro is now being charged at $400 and the Xbox Scorpio is supposed to be something vastly more powerful, then I could see it being somewhere around $500, which is still cheaper than the PS3 at launch.
Well, yes, that was $600. Yeah, oh yeah, I was there. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. Now, Microsoft is spending a year away from possibly competing in the 4K scene to deliver something that the mainstream won't understand. So when like a mom goes and buys a PlayStation 4 Pro or an Xbox Scorpio and they look down and see the price, I'm going to tell you now, the Pro will get a price cut before the Scorpio comes out. It'll probably get down to $350, for example. And if the Scorpio comes out at $500 and they both say 4K on the box, do you think the mom's going to buy the Pro or are they going to buy the Scorpio?
It really depends, because it could be a situation to where they're like one family or one household may just be familiar with the PlayStation brand.
Sure.
While one is familiar with Xbox and they've always been buying Xbox stuff. Kind of like how a long time ago everybody, or at least everyone's parents, always used to refer to all video game consoles as just Nintendos.
That's true, yeah.
So it could be something like that where the less informed person is doing whatever. And I think a lot of people, whenever they go in, they just get whatever is the newest thing.
Okay, I can see that.
If they look at it as, well, the PS4 Pro came out a year or two ago and the Xbox Scorpio is the new console, then
sure,
maybe I should get the newer one. So it could be any of those situations, but
the question will come down to the question will come down to what's out with it.
That's
true. I mean, as
yeah.
we're saying, like, they're kind of cutting games. They're saying that games will just come out across multiple things anyway. It's almost going to be like there's more exclusivity for the PlayStation 4. And we were there when the Xbox 360 kind of started dying down for its exclusivities.
Yeah,
like,
I remember that.
And the PS3 started going up, and we had people jumping ship like almost weekly, just coming in, dropping off their 360s to see if they could swap it out for one of our PS3 Slims that we just kept having.
Yep.
And it was all just because of the games. Like, Xbox seemed to stop caring about, like, oh, here's all the new cool titles. I mean, we started getting in the interesting JRPGs, decent fighting games, all for the PS3. And
it's funny you mentioned JRPG, because there was I don't even think it's really a rumor now, because I think they pretty much confirmed it as news, that apparently Phil Spencer got on a plane and flew to Japan to talk to Japanese developers about getting, like, JRPGs on the Xbox. So they know that they need that kind of stuff, and obviously right now they're really hurting. I think the only real exclusives that they're going to try to push right now, I know they have Phantom Dust, that's going to be out before A3, and then they have Crackdown that they barely ever show, but they talk about occasionally. I really can't think of any other big flagship exclusive games that are going to the Xbox, and there's definitely nothing that's going to the Xbox and, not also going to the PC right now. Halo 5 is the only thing that's only on the Xbox that I can think of right now, and Sunset Overdrive, that's the other one. So I don't know. I mean, I'm telling people it might actually even be cheaper to build a computer, because then you don't have to pay Xbox Live's fee. I mean, if that's let's say the Scorpio is a 5-year system, then you're paying $300 in Xbox Live fees, and then you're paying $500 for a system that's $800. You probably could have built a PC that's comparable, and then taken advantage of all the awesome Steam deals that come around twice a year.
Yeah, I wonder if Xbox One, or Microsoft with the Xbox Scorpio, is going to keep pushing the Kinect, whereas the Xbox One, when it first released, you could only buy it with the Kinect.
I remember that.
And then, like, a year or two after, for the first year or so, almost every game had some sort of Kinect functionality, or where you could have voice commands and stuff. I remember Dead Rising had a lot of that.
Oh, Dead Rising 3, yeah.
Yeah. But with the Scorpio, I'm wondering if they're going to try yet again to give...
I don't know. I mean, the word is they've pretty much killed their Kinect support at this point.
Yeah, because if you remember, before the Xbox One came out, we started getting all those patents and things back from people who were starting to get really afraid of the Xbox One. Because originally they said you were supposed to have Kinect hooked to it and on at all times when this console was on.
Right.
They had a patent set up so that the Kinect would look around your room for things like Coke can and stuff, and then it would start targeting advertisements at you.
I remember that.
They even had the one patent that if you had a friend over at your house and you wanted to play, let's say, the new Gears of War, and you owned the DLC but he didn't, he could not play the DLC with you.
That is crazy.
That was like in patent.
I remember that. They did the same thing. Remember they did that with a movie where they were like, if you're watching a movie, it'll pick out how many people are in a room. I remember hearing about this, and it would charge based on how many people are there watching it.
Yeah.
It was absolute insane. This was a while ago. Yeah, this actually happened.
This was back when they were like, oh, no CDs, everything digital. And then they just got utterly shit on for a year.
That was
just
by Sony.
Solid year.
And remember because Sony did that thing where they were like how to share games with your friends. And then I remember that. Just cut to him handing his buddy the game, or it was the president of Sony just hands the other guy the game. So
yeah, and that's what got us that Blu-ray drive. That as you and I who repaired this stuff know, that Blu-ray drive felt like an afterthought. That thing broke so often for no reason whatsoever. We had to we cleaned the dust off the roller in it to get it to read.
It did get to that point. Yeah, you had to clean. So there's a roller that pulls a disc in for the Xbox One on the bottom, and you'd have to take that off. And if too much dust gets on it, it won't pull the disc in far enough to activate like an arm in the back that then kicks the main unit up, that then pushes the spindle into the magnet and spins the disc. So a little bit of dust would stop the entire system from working correctly for disc-based media.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like they're just constantly getting beaten while down and then making bad choices. Like I'm hoping with him talking to people about JRPGs, like going over to Japan to figure out who they can get. I hope they don't just pull over the like garbage tier ones that are just like, yeah, it's 300 hours of grinding, no real story.
Well, if you get like a game like Tales of Vesperia, which was an awesome game, by the way, on the 360, great game. If they do something like that, yes, that would be awesome. I think they're trying their hardest.
Pick up solid titles.
Yeah, I think they're trying their hardest to bring that 360 library to the Xbox One. I think that's obvious since every week or so another game goes backwards compatible. But it's just they need exclusives, like they need a bad, and they got to stop giving every single game to the PC. I know it doesn't matter to them because you're buying Windows 10, so what do they care? But oh man, it's so tough.
But in terms of gigantic, who are they making more money off of? The guy that's playing it on the Xbox One who has to pay a monthly fee, or me who doesn't?
That's a good point. There's that too. Yeah, that's the one thing they would lose if they go exclusive to Windows. Let's say they stop really with Xbox, which I don't think they will, because despite which by the way, if you guys don't know, investors in Microsoft really don't like the Xbox that much because it costs Microsoft a lot of money, and Windows does not cost Microsoft much money after initial development because they sell it. They make business deals with companies like Dell and Acer and Asus to house Windows on their computers. So that is big money. Businesses, oh my gosh, if you would see the contracts that businesses would write up right now for Windows, it is insane. And so here's the Xbox, which costs Microsoft a ton of money to make because they're building a machine. And then they look over at Windows, realize they can sell the game to the Windows users. If you're an investor, you're yelling at Microsoft to stop making that Xbox. It makes sense. But I think Microsoft really wants to be in people's homes. That's the whole idea. You have a box next to your TV that's, says Xbox on it. So they can push, obviously, products to you. They can push advertising, which advertising on the Xbox was really bad for a while. I think they've kind of cleaned it up. But for a while there were ads everywhere.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that, even though you can play some of the games on Xbox or Windows, they prefer to play it on a console. Obviously, PC has all of the benefits like higher frame rates, better graphics and stuff, depending on how powerful your computer is. But a lot of people just like the simplicity of putting a game in, not having to worry about driver updates, what is compatible, and it just works.
Right, but if they're willing to give in to just sharing the games with the computer, I don't think they'll ever be able to beat Sony in sales, because Sony will not only get the mainstream, but they will also get people who have computers. Like, I can't tell you, I bet you there's been several times, Evan might not want to admit it, he's thought about how awesome it would be to have a PS4 to play certain exclusives. Because of that. But I can tell you now, Evan, you've probably never ever thought about buying an Xbox One.
No, never.
But you've probably thought about buying a PS4 before.
PS4 definitely. Yeah, I was definitely on board with either the Wii U or the Switch. Like, I was kind of cool with either of them.
And guys, this is someone who has not owned a console since the PS2.
Yep. Well, non-handheld.
Yeah, right. Because I know your parents got the Wii for them to do bowling and stuff, right? And you ended up just on it to play the Zelda games.
Yep.
So, like, you have not gone out and like outright buy a home console since the PS2, and that was like the college years.
Yep, and I still miss all those games.
There were some good games on there, yeah. Well, PlayStation Now, man, is coming to the computer, so you can actually play some of those games on there.
Yep.
So I don't know. Microsoft has a lot to think about. I think they're torn right now between Windows. I think Windows is actually hurting them for their Xbox, because if they didn't own Windows, well, they wouldn't be in their position anyway to make the Xbox, but they would have way more exclusives on the Xbox, and I think more people would buy it. But right now, if you're a PC gamer, there's really no need to buy an Xbox. You'll spend your money on the Switch, or you'll spend your money on the PlayStation, or both. Like, that's actually, it's good to have both, I think, Switch and the PlayStation if you can. But I don't know if I can recommend buying an Xbox right now, or if you're going to, at least wait for the Scorpio to see what that offers.
Yeah, if you're going to buy a console right now, I don't even think, for me personally, Xbox One, and there's a lot of great Xbox One games, but I don't really see a reason to just buy an Xbox One, because I think the PS4, especially the Pro, and the upcoming Switch have a lot more to offer, because as you were saying, a lot of the first-party games are also coming to Windows, to where you can just play it on your computer.
You know what's funny is I think I would actually have more value out of a 360 right now, only because my computer will play most of the, obviously, Xbox One games, but there's a lot of 360 games that I can't play on my computer that I would actually play on the 360. There's was there Resonance of Fate? I don't know if that ever made it to the computer. There's obviously Tales of Vesperia. There's just so many games on the 360 that were really, really good. I mean, Skate 3 was awesome. That was on the PS3 also, but Skate 3 was so much fun, and just those games will come to Xbox One. I think Skate 3 already did, but
did you hear there was some kind of news where I forgot who it was. The people that owned the brand for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, they lost the licensing for it, and Tony Hawk was promoting or like hinting towards a new skateboarding game that wasn't Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and at the same time, the people that was behind Skate was also hinting towards something. So it could just be like Tony Hawk's Skate 4 or something like that. Which is a possibility.
I was thinking about that. That's what I was talking about on I think it was a Newswave a week or two back where I talked about that. But yeah, that's that would be great, because you bring together Tony Hawk, who obviously has the name, the notoriety, and then you bring along Skate, who has the mechanics. Because trust me, Tony Hawk 5, while after being patched was not a bad game, before being patched and everything, it was a bad game. The glitches everywhere, it was broken at times, and then you have Skate, who has just really tight mechanics with using that right stick to do everything, and it's actually difficult. It takes skill. So
yeah, and I think after like how the negative feedback that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 got, and even the HD remake, whenever they remade like the first few Tony Hawk games,
I remember that.
The negative feedback that came back with that, I'm sure Tony Hawk was thinking, oh, well, everybody used to love the game, so they'll love these. And then, there's negative feedback to the HD remake. So he thought, okay, well, people didn't like that. They've already played it for the past 10, 15 years or whatever. So maybe Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 will be the game that wins them back. It didn't do well either. So maybe he'll somehow make sure that Skate or whatever the next game will be is actually a good game, because you're known as one of the best skateboarders in the world and blah blah blah. I'm sure he doesn't want his name brand to be brought down because of poor games.
Sure.
So I'm sure he and his people will do everything they can to make sure that at the very least it may not be an amazing game, but it'll be a good game.
Okay.
So that's what I'm thinking about the whole situation. I used to be a big Tony Hawk Pro Skater fan, so
it was a good game. I mean, really, I remember playing it on the PS1. I played it on the 64 a lot because there's no load times, which was awesome. Yeah,
but I had it on the Dreamcast.
Nice. Yeah. See, I had a Dreamcast, but I didn't get that on there. I ended up getting it on the PS1 for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, and then of course 3 comes out on the PS2, and I get it on there. But, I like 2 a lot. 2 was good. That had the skate park creator, if I remember right. And that was awesome. I would just make, like, big ramps on either side with rails going all the way down to the ground, and you just do that all day. But, That was really cool. And then they had the bail videos at the end where if you beat it enough times, you'd see people just smashing their face into the ground over and over again.
Yeah.
So I do think that would actually go over very well if Tony Hawk does that. Or maybe at E3 he'll just announce the next Tony Hawk ride.
It'll be something with VR.
Yeah.
Oh no!
People will die in the process.
Just stand on top of your Switch with your PSVR helmet on, and then.
Oh man! So let me ask you about VR, Jesse. What are your thoughts exactly on VR here?
I haven't had any personal experience with VR. I haven't been lucky. I remember I forgot what it was. There wasn't any places around me that was demoing the PSVR or any of the others. But I don't know if it was GameStop or Best Buy, but I seen a news story where there was so much interest for people to come in and try out VR that they were actually charging it was $5 or something like that to actually just to demo the unit. But then if you ended up purchasing it, it would go towards $5 off of whatever it was that you were going to be purchasing or something like that. I thought that was a bit ridiculous.
I wonder if that was more out of annoyance, because I always viewed VR as one of those things where people kind of want to experience, but when they're experiencing it, they realize how limited they're going to be using it. Because all the games you ever see are like jump scare games, semi-exploration games, or puzzle games. You never really see anything else amazing in it. Like, there's been hints at something like Skyrim type in it, but it's never 100% that direction. So, I mean, like, what else is there to do with VR other than take you through what would be considered a standard game today with the ability to look around a little bit?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people using the term experiences. So instead of playing a game, you're just going to be playing an experience. Because a lot of the games are just, they aren't fully fledged out AAA games unless it's like Resident Evil. It's just like, I think Rocksteady had the Batman VR for PS4.
Yes, I remember that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it wasn't a full Arkham style game. It was just you would look around and kind of teleport over, jump to different locations. Yep. And it wasn't an actual game. It was more of an experience. There was the job simulator and stuff like that as well.
Well, yeah, because with the Batman thing, you lose what makes the Arkham series great: the countering system, the combat system, the extremely quick snap to and use of tool function for like really high-end combos. You're not doing that with a VR helmet on.
No,
it's just not happening.
And I think there's a huge push for first-person types of VR, but I think having like a third-person behind-the-back camera angle for VR would still work, similar to if you've played Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask on the 3DS, whenever you L target or used to be Z target in those games, when you did that, your character or the camera or whatever would kind of stay in one spot, but if you moved it back and forth without touching any of the buttons, the gyro or motion controls inside of it would still move the camera around behind the back. And I think something like that would be cool, to where if you're playing a game, you can see your character in front of you, but you're looking through the camera that you would always look through, and it would still give you it may not necessarily be a great VR experience, but you would still get a great 3D effect from it.
Yeah, but I mean, that could be weird in the sense if you get like spun around or the character kind of rolls out a little bit of the camera view and you got to actually physically spin to see what's going on.
Yeah, I guess.
The only thing I've ever thought of with VR that could be interesting is sort of along the lines of how like Last Guardian works, except you're playing a small character that's always on like something much larger than you, and you're controlling it that way. So you get like a cool vision of what's around you, but you have sort of that almost feels like a third person control of something that's kind of carrying you around and doing things. So, I mean, I don't know. VR just never feels like it feels more of a gimmick than motion control to me, which is weird.
Yeah,
it just never feels super immersive. I think is the problem. I mean, it puts you in the game, but you can't really walk or move very well or anything. At least how it is now. I think when we get to the point where you walk into a room and it's like the holodeck from Star Trek, I won't be super impressed until then. But
yeah, well, yeah, because even the setups that try to counteract that, where you have like the zero friction flooring, the harnesses you have to wear to hold you in place, so you can actually like spin around in one spot and then like walk along a floor that doesn't move you, and wear a VR headset. Like, to get that set up just to experience a game. I don't think it's
you have tethers
that interesting.
You have tethers going everywhere. There's cords all over the place. it's interesting, but I think VR has its place in a couple things. I think it would be great for educational purposes in like a classroom. I think it would work great, but for games, I think it still has a long way to go to give you that really awesome immersive experience that's still interactive. I think it's the problem. A lot of stuff still just isn't very interactive. So we'll see where that goes. It's going to be a while. I know Zuckerberg at I feel like it was at like a keynote. He was talking about, because obviously they own Oculus. He was talking about how VR is still about 10 years off from being like good, and I tend to agree with him on that. That would put us probably 2027 until we see good VR.
Yeah, the hardware's got to catch up, but I think to a degree the creativity has to catch up too. Like, you've seen the VR based painting program, right?
No. Oh wait, no. Yeah, is that where you can like where you have like you can sculpt something like in front of you, and then it'll go into CAD and stuff like that?
A guy was using tools in it, and he generated like a scene of something that he was inside, and he was able to actually like create it in 3D, but it could still be viewed well as a 2D thing. And he was actually able to adjust stuff in the painting from within it. So like, it was pretty cool conceptually, but like, I don't know. It's still just the way we tell stories might have to change to suit VR.
It's going to be a bit, but I think we're coming up on about an hour now, so we're probably going to close this out soon. But Jesse, what are your final thoughts on, I guess I want to say, the Switch, since that's going to be obviously a big deal next week. I assume you're excited for it, but are you just going to mostly be doing Zelda pretty much all day?
Yeah, I think for like the first week, I'll be just live streaming Breath of the Wild as much as I can.
Sure.
Other news videos are kind of going to go to the side for the live streams and everything, because I want to play the game immediately, but I also want to create content for people so they're not missing out on like a week's worth of video. So I think this will be like the best way to kind of do both.
Sure.
And then the emotion I'm feeling right now, more than anything for the Switch, obviously excitement, but a lot of jealousy, because I've been seeing all of these people, like obviously, IGN, all those places are going to be getting their Switches, but then I've seen some of my friends that do YouTube videos like HMK earlier posted video. He does videos similar to what you and I do, talking about news and usually Zelda or Kingdom Hearts focused. So he's been, digging in, trying to find every bit of information about Zelda that he can. And earlier he posted a picture of like the Switch home screen on his TV with Breath of the Wild in the background.
Oh, so he has a Switch?
Yeah, I guess a few days ago the first round of Switches went out to everybody, and now the second round is going out to like the smaller people.
I'm a little confused by this, because I see some channels that are small. Like, I see some that have like 7,000 subscribers, and they're getting a Switch. So I'm a little confused by that. Now, I don't think Nintendo likes me very much, because I'm critical about them, especially their creators program. But I did sign up for it, and I sent them an email, and they didn't respond back. So I put this out on Twitter. So what I did was, after I didn't hear back from them, I said, okay. So I sent them a picture of me standing there just holding a screwdriver, staring at the camera, and then I just sent them that, and then I just put 3-3 down below it in the date, and then I sent it to them, because that Switch is coming apart, whether they like it or not, the night it comes out. Like, I'm going to get the thing, I'm bringing it back here, I'm going to unbox it, I'm going to turn it on, make sure it works, turn it back off, and I'm taking it apart along with the Joy-Cons and dock and everything. So
just to see basically what's inside of it?
Yes, that is the idea. High-def pictures everywhere. I want to see what's inside the Joy-Cons, I want to see what's inside the Pro Controller, everything.
Yeah, so. See, the craziest thing that I've seen is, I know Nintendo, they're sending it out to all of the larger people to make sure the people with the most viewers will be able to promote it or whatever. But one thing that drove me absolutely nuts is if you all know who Kinda Funny is, the ex-IGN people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, well, there's 5 of them. The 2 that were looking forward to the Switch the most was Tim and Greg, and the rest of them were kind of iffy about it. And then after the presentation, most of the people on Kinda Funny had negative stuff to say about it. They were like, well, I'm looking forward to Zelda, but I'm not really looking forward to the Switch itself.
Right.
And they received a Switch console, and then later on they were talking about how they might get a second console. So for me, I understand Nintendo wants to send it out to people that have a huge following, but why would Nintendo choose to send it out to people that are just going to give it negative feedback or have spoken out against it?
Right.
Whereas they could send it to one of my friends, Mossy's, who runs like the larger Zelda website, Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon. You know, he has 125,000, like more subscribers than HMK, who now has the Nintendo Switch. He has more subscribers to him and a lot of other people that have received the second round of shipments, but he still hasn't received one, when that would be the ideal fan base or target that you would want to send to someone. So I just think it's weird.
I'm gonna explain a couple things to you real quick, Jesse. I've done a lot of research on this, and I'm a big statistics person, so I deal with stats a lot. And I figured out pretty quickly that, also talking to other YouTubers who have dealt with this, Nintendo seems to be a very weird company when it comes to sending this stuff out. Now, you mentioned HMK, for example, who is they've done a lot of Nintendo stuff, right? I kind of looked at their channel a little bit. So I've done things like, again, I like to look at other channels. I've done a lot of research to try to grow this channel a lot. So I do things like Social Blade a lot. I don't know if you do that at all, to check out other channels and see how they're doing. And I've looked at a couple channels that, for example, got Switches that I've seen. And I've seen a couple of them, and you go on Social Blade, and it's like, oh, they had like 500,000 views last month or something like that, right? And that's good. And then I look at other ones, and they have like 100,000 views for the last month. And I'm like, I just don't know how they're getting. They must have an insider at Nintendo or something.
Yeah. Because
the amount of views that, for example, Spawnwave Media got last month is very I don't want to say exactly how many it is, very close to how many HMK got last month. Very close. It's about double or triple the other person I talked about just now at 500,000. So I don't know how. I know Nintendo does not like certain channels. Boogie 2988 did not get a Switch. I don't know how that didn't happen, because he gets, I have no problem saying this, he gets about 8 million views a month. And he didn't get a Switch. So I was very confused about that. And then I remembered people like Boogie, people like myself, have gone on record and said that Nintendo's YouTube policies are bad. So I don't think Nintendo likes that. I do think that they pay attention a lot to YouTube, other than claiming people say, I don't know how you go about it, Jesse, but if I do anything with Nintendo's footage, they then claim the video.
Yeah, a good way to get around that is, especially, talking about Zelda, you have to show gameplay of Zelda, or else people are just going to be looking at a blank screen or me talking to the camera,
right.
Which a lot of people don't want to see me, they want to see Zelda. So a good way that I can get around that is if you edit up each clip to shorter than 10 seconds and then jump to a different clip, it doesn't run long enough for Nintendo to catch it as one of the copyright claims or anything. You can kind of get around that.
Really? Yeah, I talked to Commonwealth, and he was telling me about that too, but I didn't really pay attention too much. So it's 10 seconds. I'll remember that. That.
I also want to say that whenever I was talking earlier, like saying, oh, I'm jealous of HMK and Kinda Funny and stuff, I want to say that Kinda Funny is my number one go-to YouTube channel that I always watch. I watch almost everything from them. So it's not me hating on them that they got a Switch. It's just me curious about what kind of how Nintendo goes about choosing who's getting a Switch and who doesn't.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can be frustrated at it and still like them. I think we all understand that. It is an odd choice on Nintendo's part for who they send it to. I think if they want to reach a lot of eyeballs, you send it to, say, Boogie, for example, instead of sending it to somebody who has like a much lesser audience with like 10,000 subscribers that might not even do the job, because all Boogie would have to do is put Francis on camera with the Switch and it would get a guaranteed 300 to 400,000 views just like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. They made the right choice with some places. Game Explain obviously deserves a Switch because they do some very good coverage of stuff and they explain stuff well. So I think there's a lot of places that do deserve it. I think there's places that have question marks as to why they have a Switch, but it's not going to matter after the 3rd because we'll all have the Switch then. Well, most of us will. Most of us will. I don't want to say everyone because there are some people who won't be able to get it. But like,
I feel bad for those people.
But like, there's channels that do serious dirty work to make the Switch better. For example, there's a lot of places that will do accessory guides or stuff like that to try to help people pick out accessories. I actually did one of those videos recently, and you're just trying to help people pick out accessories, for the Switch. And it's like, that's something that Nintendo should get behind because you are effectively selling stuff with them. So it just seems weird to me sometimes, but Nintendo's going to be Nintendo, and that seems to be the way it is. I have a feeling they probably didn't send one to Angry Joe either, because Angry Joe has been like at the forefront of this Nintendo thing. I don't know if you saw not his most recent video. It was
a while ago. Yeah, they like shut down a huge percentage of his videos because they had Nintendo.
Yes. Well, he went on record and said that he's going to do a review for Zelda. If they claim it, he's going to sue them and take them to court. Wow. So I'm going to be interesting what happens there, because what they claim in most videos is considered fair use. So Angry Joe should win in court, and it might cause Nintendo to revise their entire creators program.
Yeah, wasn't there? Who was it? Jim Sterling that just had a huge legal battle that was complete bullcrap. Yeah,
it was bad, because that's the thing. If people don't like what you have to say, and this isn't what Nintendo does because they just claim for their intellectual properties being on camera, this was something where somebody did not like his review, so they sued him for $10 million.
Yeah. Which
is ridiculous, because if you give a bad review, you should not be worried about a company coming after you for giving your opinion on camera.
Yeah, and I think it would be one thing if someone just went out and absolutely hated something that most people like. Like if a game's getting 10s everywhere and you don't like it, that's fine. That's your opinion. But it makes it worse that the game that the company that was suing them, the game was actually a really bad game. Like,
right.
It was
didn't that guy? Was this the same guy that sued like tons of places and then was eventually told to sit down and shut up? And then
this was awesome. This is Digital Homicide, their best move ever. Yeah. Steam, how people can go on Steam and review games. He sued 100 Steam user reviews.
Yeah, wasn't it like he wanted 18 million or something like that from Steam because of bad reviews.
So Steam turns around and just kicks the game off Steam and tells them to go home, basically.
Yeah.
And that gets thrown out.
There was another thing whenever it was thrown out of court and they ruled in favor of Jim. They ruled it out with prejudice, which is like, if they didn't do that, then they could kind of reform the lawsuit and try to take it back. But the court was basically like, don't do this again.
Right.
Like, yes. What you were doing is completely wrong. Yes.
So what's interesting is now they can use that case. They can use that example to look back on if there's ever another time that somebody gets sued for their opinions. That's actually a good thing that it happened. Technically, it's probably not good because Jim had to pay. I'm sure Jim Sterling had to pay quite a bit of money for lawyers, but still, it's at least
and
they got thrown out.
There's always that chance in the back of your head, like even though he was in the right, there's always the chance that he could have lost. And just the thought of like the money they were asking for was completely ridiculous.
Well, it would have ruined him. I mean, it would have ruined anybody. It's $10 million.
Yeah.
So that's not good. But so we have I guess wrapped up our first SpawnCast here.
Yeah, inaugural awesome. SpawnCast.
Yes,
I got a bit off topic for some of it. So.
No, that's fine. I think a lot of people like to see behind the curtain with that kind of stuff too, with Nintendo's creators program. I've talked about it at length on camera before, so I think everyone's pretty much up to date on it now. But I'm glad it went over well here, and I think everyone at this point is just waiting for next Thursday night or next Friday, I guess, for some maybe you'll get it Thursday morning. So we'll see. But Jesse, you wanna point them in the direction of your channel?
Twitter, YouTube, wherever you look, everything's at GameOverJesse or youtube.com/GameOverJesse. Just whatever the website is, GameOverJesse. After that, you'll be able to find me there. Specifically on YouTube, like I just said or mentioned earlier, it's all Zelda news or Nintendo. Sometimes we break away from Zelda, look at other games like Mario and stuff. And then basically it's just a big place. If you're a fan of Zelda, go there. There's tons of people in the comments that you can talk to about whatever you want to find out about Zelda. There's a good small little community there that'll help you out. And with my videos, it's basically like this, to where it's just myself and others talking about Zelda or talking about whatever news is coming up.
That's awesome. That's good. That's good. So you should also be able to find this on iTunes and make sure your SoundCloud as well.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll see how that goes. Sometimes I feel like I'm like a 70-year-old man in a 29-year-old body. So, but in this case, we will put that on iTunes, put that on SoundCloud. So make sure you give us a review and rating on there if you could. That'll really help us out. We would appreciate it. But for now, I am John at SpawnWave Media. Evan is also at SpawnWave Media. But Evan, what's your art channel as well?
Kimmeric's project. We'll have to put it in the actual description, I'm guessing, for the YouTube video. At the very least.
We should also have a slide here that you are looking at if you're on YouTube that has Jesse's information and Evan's information on the front cover as well. You should be looking right at it, actually.
But yeah, it's basically that anywhere, really. YouTube, Twitter. I think I have that same thing for Instagram and Twitch.
Okay, very good. And with that, that should do it for today. And we will try to make this either a weekly or bi-weekly, depending on, like I said, if we can get other people on here. Otherwise, it would just be Evan and myself talking about different things in gaming. So definitely look towards SpawnWave Media for different things. I'm sure the Switch is coming out. We'll be taking it apart. And I'm sure you'll see all kinds of cool Zelda stuff from Jesse over at GameOverJesse. And maybe we'll get fortunate and Evan can do up an inaugural Zelda painting or picture or whatever you want to do in Photoshop there, Evan, or what are you working?
I got the Link one working right now. Well,
oh, cool.
I have that convention coming up, Galacticon.
Yes, Galacticon,
Delaware. So I have the 4 prints I'm doing, which hopefully I can finish up before then, of sort of fantasy reimaginings of some characters. And with Link and Kid Icarus, it's sort of like not that hard. So with Link, I did like an older Link because like what happens after he saves the princess. So
okay.
Kind of wanted him to be that type of character. But then I also did a fantasy version of Samus as kind of like fully armored knight that uses cannons. And I have a Mega Man, sort of like a mechanical heavy knight.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, man. Cool. So that'll do it for our first episode of SpawnCast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at SpawnWave Media, and we will see you guys next time.